Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the West Free riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. At the beginning of July, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report. It got some media attention for a day, but then quietly faded away. The report looked at the long-term costs of 5 of Trudeau's new federal credits. These are the NDP Liberals' new mega subsidy programs for clean energy, clean electricity, hydrogen, carbon capture, and electric vehicle battery manufacturing. The Budget Officer report said over the next 5 years, each of those 5 programs would cost Canadian taxpayers about $5 billion each. But the PBO also looked at what it would cost over the next 12 years. Here's the chart. Just one of those subsidy programs, the one for clean energy, is going to cost double what the 3 other subsidy programs will cost. Together, the 5 programs will cost $100 billion. But the so-called clean energy subsidy accounts for 35%. And it's not even the worst part. I'm not a big fan of government subsidies, but some of these federal programs are being matched by provincial governments run by Conservative governments. Those provincial governments make 2 arguments to support the subsidies. The government of Alberta argues that subsidies for carbon capture will incentivize companies to build carbon capture technology. By giving a subsidy, the government can get a company to do something it would not do without the subsidy. The government of Ontario argues that subsidies for electric vehicle batteries attract companies to set up factories in Canada instead of somewhere like the United States or Mexico. By giving a subsidy, the government can get a company to do the thing it is planning to do anyhow, but in a different location. In both cases, the federal and provincial governments are using subsidies to get companies to do something they would not otherwise do. The NDP Liberal Clean Energy Subsidy is different. The federal government is giving money to provincial electricity utilities to build clean power plants. But remember, the NDP Liberals also passed regulations to make it illegal to build traditional power plants. So provincial electric utilities are going to be building clean power plants, such as dams or nuclear power plants, regardless of any subsidy. They can't be lured to another province or state because they are the provincial electrical utilities. It just doesn't make financial sense. The biggest federal subsidy is the most useless. You might be asking, how is that possible? How could this be? For that, we have to go back to the summer of 2020. Bill Morneau was Trudeau's finance minister at that time. And the pair of them had just been caught trying to give $1 billion program to their personal friends over at the We charity. The Liberals were shoveling billions of dollars out the door as fast as possible, but it wasn't fast enough for Trudeau's inner circle. So the Prime Minister's minions started complaining about the finance minister to the Globe and Mail. A few weeks later, and Bill Morneau was out, and journalist Chrystia Freeland was in. Having no experience with economics, Trudeau's feminist government decided she'd need a man to hold her hand. They went with the former CEO of Bell and a friend of the World Economic Forum, Michael Sabia, who became the Deputy Minister of Finance. Sabia was the deputy minister when they brought in this nonsensical subsidy for provincial electricity utilities. Shortly after the Liberals passed their budget, Mr. Sabia quit his job as deputy finance minister and became the CEO of Hydro-Quebec, a provincial electricity utility. So Freeland's handholder first energize the battery plants that need more energy than there is. So what this all means is the architect of the $100 billion blowout spent the tax dollars, then changed jobs to manage part of the $1 billion. Brilliant for him. EVs are sitting on car lots because Canadians either don't want them or can't afford them. On Wednesday, the Ethics Committee heard testimony from Stephen Anderson, the business partner of Randy Boissonnault. Randy's also the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development, and Official Languages. Here's a quick recap. For the last few weeks, Global News has been investigating Liberal Minister Randy Boissonnault and his ownership of a company called Global Health Initiatives. Ministers are supposed to put any assets they own into blind trusts. They are not allowed to be involved in any way with the company. Last Monday, Global News released a text exchange between Randy Boissonnault's business partner, Stephen Anderson, and a prospective client. In the text, Stephen Anderson wrote, "I just got this from Randy." Below that sentence in the text, Mr. Anderson included a message from Randy. The last sentence in the message, "From Randy to Mr. Anderson," is the clincher. Be available in 15 minutes for a partner call. Now the minister is claiming he is not the Randy in the text message. He claims there's another person named Randy who works for the company he owns, but Minister Randy doesn't know the last name of the employee Randy. So naturally, we were looking forward to learning who this other mysterious Randy was. But as it turns out, Mr. Anderson lied to Global News. There is no other Randy in charge of logistics.
That is the story. That is what was published.
That is the story.
Yes. That is what was published, yes.
That is the story. Is that what you said?
I was contacted by a blocked phone number. This is probably June. I'm not sure of the exact date. I was contacted by someone calling and asking me, is Randy there? I said no. They went on to say, does Randy Boissonnault work at the operation? I said no, they don't. They identified as Kristen Poon, or sorry, not Kristen Poon, as Krista Hesse from Global News. I admit that I did panic when she said, is there another Randy?
So you lied?
To the reporter, I did, yes.
So I appreciate that. I actually do. Maybe it's the first truth I've heard.
So if there is no other Randy, then the Randy in the text message must be Randy Boissonnault, right? Well, according to Mr. Anderson, the reason the name Randy appeared in the text message seen by Global News was because of autocorrect. Unfortunately for Mr. Anderson, my conservative colleagues have seen more texts than the ones reported by Global News. In fact, there are 9 different texts from Mr. Anderson, all mentioning Randy. Now, according to Mr. Anderson, all of those were autocorrect Randys. Now, I'm sure you sent a text with an autocorrected word that was incorrect. We've all done it. But we also send a follow-up email to correct the autocorrect. All of us, except Mr. Anderson. According to him, he sent a client incorrect texts 9 times and never once corrected the record. Well, I just have one thing to say to that. Why do we even care? The company Randy was an owner of was Global Health Imports. it got $38.2 million in personal protective equipment PPE orders, only the PPE never went to the customers who paid in advance. Global Health Import says the PPE was lost in a fire. Under Justin Trudeau, it's become impossible for millions of Canadians to buy a home. For nearly a decade, Trudeau ignored the problem. Then Trudeau claimed it's not a federal matter. His mismanagement of the economy made it a federal matter. Once the Liberals had fallen 20 points behind in the polls, they finally admitted housing was now a federal matter. So what was the big Liberal solution? A catalog, like the ones you'd go through at Beaver Lumber back in the 1990s to pick out a home blueprint. That was their bold new policy. Dust off an old book of house plans from a home building supply store. That was it. The Liberals would recreate a federal housing catalog from the 1960s. The idea is that it would include blueprints for easy-to-approve housing, which sounds perfectly reasonable until we remember we're dealing with Liberals. According to the Liberal government, they only want 4 types of housing in the catalog, and none of those types are single-family homes. The Liberals' tiny homes catalog would see Canadians crammed into row houses and multi-unit buildings like the ones put up in a matter of weeks for the coal miners in Wales 200 years ago. You see, single-family homes are incompatible with progressive ideology. It's hard to cram people into 15-minute cities when they live in a single-family home. To even be included in the Liberals' tiny homes catalog, developers must prove their tiny home designs are lowering carbon emissions. In a recent survey by the polling firm Leger, the most in-demand housing types are the single-family detached homes. People want to own a home and raise a family. The Liberals promise Soviet-style apartment blocks and free contraception. Is it any wonder why they're 20 points behind in the polls? Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.